Incidentally, there No Dice is also the name of a power pop album from 1970 by the group Badfinger, and that's what you get when you put No Dice into Google. That and pretty much nothing else but that again and again after the fourth page of Google. Yeah, I gave up. Thanks, Badfinger. Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Audiophiles. My name's John, his name's Andy, and today, of course, is a Friday episode. And so we are listening to a track suggested by one of our viewers. Before we get into that, ticking away the moments that make up a dull day, fritter and waste the hours in an offhand way. Kicking around on a piece of ground in your hometown, waiting for someone or something to show you the way. Maybe not more on that later because we both know it way too well. But just you got to do it, and yeah. So Friday, we have a track suggested by Music and Cat Lover VC6JB. Is it their registration plate? We don't know. But they kindly dropped a comment on one of our episodes, Godfathers, birth, school, work, death. Let's get in some legway on the old viewers' requests.
Yeah.
And they have suggested, rather interesting little number, No Dice is the band. And the track is Shadows. Now, neither of us had any, we saw it with No Dice.
Yeah, it's exactly one of our reactions.
But Andy's the lucky one who's going to go off and have a listen to this. And yeah, we're both of us completely in the dark about this, aren't we?
Yeah. Yeah. At least in the shadows. But we'll work on remedying that, and I will go off and yes. I'll go off, give it a listen, and let you and the cat lover and everybody else know what I made of it upon my return.
Bon chance, Marie.
It's like staticky a little bit.
Pretty girls with starry eyes, working days, not sleeping nights, anywhere's home till the gray light creeps in, taken in the shadows.
And cello.
Lonely girls out with the stars, disappearing
Guitar's pretty.
on some stranger's arm. Maybe they won't ever be seen again.
Descending bass.
Girls who do for their careers with their big ideas, they get starstruck blind, so they're clutching at straws for a night in a film where life is the price they may pay.
Interesting sound. It's like eerie a little bit. I'm surprised. We don't often listen to songs that have this kind of power ballad quality to them on this channel, and this definitely does, which is not something I typically gravitate toward. But there are aspects musically to this song that are just like deftly done. All of it is really. It's just typically not my cup of tea. But that's not to say I'm not enjoying a lot of what I'm hearing thus far. Some really nice bass work being done earlier on before this sort of fully blossomed, and it was doing some really cool high stuff before it went back down to playing in that typical lower bass pocket. But yeah, really, really interesting stuff, and like touches of cello here and there, and the different sounds coming from the guitar. The keys have a great sound to them as well. Yeah, I mean it's good. It's just a bit over the top in some aspects, like power balladry can be, but it's still really enjoyable. Lift guitar.
Sun-colored eyes, ardent smiles, still trying for time with anyone inside, caring not which way the wind now blows.
That bass is nice.
Crying in the shadows.
Oh, soprano sax or flute or something.
She's fallen this time. Now she's fallen. She's always falling.
Oh my goodness. Oh hey, what's up, LeBron? Yeah, that was great. Like that last portion, I should say, for sure. Like I liked the song overall. But man, that latter portion really shined for me. There were aspects of this that bordered on, but didn't step over the line of like corny or cheesy, which you can get with a lot of power ballad stuff. The points where it came closest to me were the points where they played with dynamics, where it would hang on resonance and one note that the singer was carrying out, only to then, you know, for the music to die just a second before it goes into another part. That happens so much in that kind of music, where it becomes kind of predictable how they'll segue parts. But you'd be a fool to say that these guys weren't musically talented, because I mean, the writing's on the wall. There was just some great bass work. The guitars were wonderful. The drum work was so measured and deft and just perfectly done. Not over the top, nothing crazy. All of those fills were perfect. for what they were meant to do. And the way during those portions where they did where those fills would take place, like on the toms mostly, the bass was doing some really fabulous work as well. Everybody sounded great in this song, and I would listen to this again, and I intend to get a better understanding of how I really feel about it after just one listen. But it does kind of fly close to this genre that I typically avoid. It reminds me of, like, I don't know, Journey or Boston, or sometimes vocally, even when it's getting close to its most over the top, like almost like Meatloaf. And these are artists that I don't listen to or actively seek out. But from what I've heard of them, it just had shades of that going on. But this was, in my opinion, much better than that, and didn't, commit fully to that kind of sound. There were just aspects where I'm like, hmm. But yeah, this was great. That lead guitar work, all those hammer and trills and pulls that the lead guitarist was doing there sounded great. And the way they, like, that sort of symphonic or orchestral sound was coming through just enough in the background during that part really helped the swelling nature that I think they were going for anyway with the music at that point. And honestly, that latter part could have gone on for another 45 seconds or so, and I would have been totally cool with just hearing them jam out on that a bit more and feeling more of that, those string swell that I mentioned earlier. But yeah, this was a good first listen. I'd say I'm probably 70-30, 75-25, somewhere in there on the enjoyment scale. But yeah, it was a good first listen, an interesting chance to listen to a band that I've never heard before. So not a bad introduction at all. I'm curious if the rest of their stuff has this kind of quality to it, where it's flirting with, power ballad sounds and things like that. But yeah, hopefully John can clear that up and some more for me when we get back to him. So let's do just that.
Bishop of Bath and Wells, he's back. So you've had to listen to Shadows by
Nice.
No Dice. What do you
Yes, I
make of it
did.
all?
Oh man, what do I make of it? Well, let's start off with my notes, and we'll go through and we'll get around to my feelings on aspects of this song. More positive than negative, but there were some things that kind of like surprised me a little bit about this. So there were starts off with these distant keys slowly sort of coming into focus through the sounds of like crackling, which were akin to like an old vinyl or listening through the AM band of a radio, which I kind of like. That's I've when that's used correctly and not heavy-handedly, there is I don't know, there's something interesting and nostalgic about it, because some of my earliest like absorbing of music came coupled with full blown crackles from albums and vinyl that came out in like the late 50s and 60s. So this was sort of like, I'm used to that sound, and it kind of like takes me back. So I liked that a lot.
Actually, it occurs to me, and it occurred to me, well, after we'd talked about a recent thing we'd done, UB40, and I mentioned how everybody mistook their lyrics. Um, and afterwards, I was thinking about it, and back then, the radio was AM, not FM. And it's
Mhm.
a sort of radio where it would cut out if you went under a bridge or whatever,
Yeah,
and
oh
it
yeah,
was sort of and back again.
yeah,
And you're right, the sort of music then you experienced wasn't of the best fidelity, as we should say,
yes.
both, physically at home and on the radio. And yeah, that sort of all fits in with that.
Yeah, but that if you put that on for like a 20-year-old, they'd be like, "What is this garbage?" Like, but for us, for some reason,
This is
us
fine.
recognizing that it is like not the best quality or fidelity, it still has this nostalgic feel to it. So
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, I was kind of charmed by the use of it here. Um, and then over the top of that are laid these vocals that kind of swing and sway between breathy and near soaring, which gives the song more than just a touch of like a ballad like aspect with this vocal delivery. Then just around or before the 40-second mark, I pick up on what sounds like the faintest bit of cello work, very briefly. Nothing crazy, but just a bit of some deep but distant resonance, of like that bow on string kind of sound. And just after that, there's a tinkling, kind of higher registered bit of guitar, kind of clipped melody that I assume is like on an acoustic or an acoustic electric guitar. And this bit of guitar work falls into a well-picked melodic motif over top of the keys and is joined by these five descendant thrums of the bass and some cymbal cascading as the singer holds the note of the final lyric on this portion, and there's a little bit of resonance. And we get this the slightest of pauses, and then the music fully re-enters on the downbeat at the 120 mark. Now with a fuller sound, but no less ballad-esque. And I gotta say that the higher note bass work going on during this brief portion is really terrific. I liked a lot of the bass work in this song. And this is followed by some raps on the toms as the songs move forward. And oftentimes that's like there's a lot of reoccurring motifs about how they segue portions of this song or connect them. One of them is this tom type stuff with a bass fill that complements it. That happens a lot throughout this. Another one is this idea of the singer holding out the last note on the last syllable of a lyric while the music resonates to a near level of like nothingness, almost like you barely get it, and then it moves into the other part, which again screams ballad to me. Like the American rock ballad uses these same mechanisms often to the point where it's kind of cliche. So this was only further fortifying this whole like power ballad kind of feeling I was getting from this. um Again, we are met with another spot where the singer sustains a note while the music pauses over it, and this sort of musical resonance, which this time is followed by some very eerie sounding warbling. We've talked about eerie sounds recently on a couple tracks, and this is sort of that same like
Yeah.
all kind of that you automatically equate the song to like, or the sound, I should say, not the song, to like Halloween type sounds and sound effects that you hear on, scary songs or whatever. So interesting that we're catching this yet again. Um, and then some brief power ballad lead guitar. Now this is definitely the lead guitar as it shines in different portions of the song is super mid to late 70s rock power ballad stuff that is
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
it's poured on at this point. All this is short-lived, and the singer comes back into the mix, and again there's more stellar high bass work noodling about during this bit, and things hush down a bit again, and the singer delivers the line crying in the shadows as the guitar and what sounds like a soprano sax or a flute begins to play. And we get some bass and drum work, and then another lead guitar motif pours over the top of this musical tapestry that they've spun. Some nice drum fills again appear, and throughout this portion, as the guitar soars through the soundscape with some fine hammer and trill work, again, super rock ballad. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe I catch some orchestral sounds injected into the backdrop over which this guitar is shining, which is great because it only further adds to this kind of swelling feeling that the music is building behind the guitar. So, and I honestly, I wish that would have kept going. This kind of like, you know, it kind of comes to an end after this point. Like the song works its way to a kind of an abrupt end, and I wish it would have gone on because this is my favorite part of the song. Gone on for another 40 seconds or so or whatever. But if I'm being honest, there were many more aspects of this song to both thoroughly enjoy and or appreciate, but there were a couple things about the song that didn't completely grab me. And it's mostly the vocals, if I'm being honest. It was a little too. So I'm not a big power ballad guy. And believe me, there are far more worse examples of this kind of song in this particular genre than this tune. But that sound often flies a little too close to the corny or cheesy Sun for my liking. In fact, sometimes it flies right into it. But at this point, it felt there were points in the songs where I felt the cringe creeping at a distance, but it didn't fully reach me. But I can't deny the absolute talent on display throughout this number by every single member of the band. The drums were deft and precise. They were never over the top, so I really loved the work that they did. I mentioned earlier the bass was smooth as butter and really did some great high note work, tinkering around and worked really great in unison with the drums. The keys and the guitar shined really brightly, and I loved the bits of orchestral stuff with the strings and the woodwind instruments. They were just superb. The vocalist, while having a terrific voice, did at times make me feel like I was listening to something akin to like Boston or Journey, or dare I say, even Meatloaf. And those are bands that I never have gravitated toward. I understand that there is room for them, and people adore those bands, and they, still follow them to this day if they go on tour. But I would say like this is sort of 70-30 for me. I appreciated and or liked 70% of what was going on, but there's probably 30% of this that reminded me of things that I'm just not comfortable with musically, though I know that there are plenty of other people that are. Also, I realized this is the first time I've ever heard of this band. So it's not enough for me to just say this is who the band is. I'm just saying it about this one song. Perhaps there's other stuff in their oeuvre or their discography that is different than this and offers other sort of genre flirtations than power ballad 70s rock ballad stuff. But that's what I picked up on. And that was my experience listening to it. There was far more good than there was bad, but I would be a liar if I was to sit here and not say that there weren't aspects of this that kind of were like, So that's where I stand. That's where I sort of fall on the song. What did you think? I'm interested to hear your aspect because this is one of those rare things where we both don't know the artist or the song. So how did you experience it? And then tell me what you learned about the band when you did your homework.
Um, okay, not a lot about the band I learned
Oh,
anyway, but about this song. So yeah, it was interesting from the gate. It, you get those sort of rocky sounding songs, whether you want to label them power ballads or whatever. And each decade, we said this before, have a certain feel to them, like a 60s version of this song. You would hear it straight away, or an 80s one, sort of White Snakey or something
yeah.
stupid like that. This is right, as you say, slapping that mid 70s period. And for that reason, I have a slight fondness for it, out of probably nostalgia and sitting in the back of my dad's Cortina, listening to
Yeah.
songs like this on the aforementioned AM radio. Um, I remember Dad, those sort of rigs in the car. Also, the early ones only had a fast forward button. They didn't have a rewind button on the cassette. And when you fast forward it when it was playing, you would get and us kids would laugh at that, thinking that was brilliant. That was the best bit. So there's all this nostalgia to it. Yeah, I would echo quite a bit of what you said. It did have that feel that was almost this slightly sort of coming out from after those kind of god awful rock opera type films and
Yeah.
stuff like that. I mean, the Who have got a lot to answer for in many ways, and Tommy being one of them. I mean, bizarrely, I love Quadrophenia, but Tommy's goddamn awful. And it's that sort of drama added to it, but. And that's not a bad thing in itself, but I also think here the subject matter here is a bit heavy-handed. As about an ingenue trying to get into sort of film and and you talk about his voice again. Clearly, every person in this is very talented,
Without
but
question.
it's but at times certain words I was straight away taken to Jack Black, Tenacious D. The way he pronounced certain words. It certainly wasn't Jack Black, the way he really goes overboard,
Yeah, and it was without the
It's just,
irony that comes with
yeah,
Jack Black's, performances.
yeah. But it was just when they said the word time, it was very much like, and that sort of made me chuckle a little bit. So yeah, there was a curious one. I'll get into the band, etc., but there is absolutely jack all about them on Tinternet. And so, I was looking through comments and posts on various forums about them, and they're a much loved band, but they obviously have a limited reach, hence the lack of footprint on Tinternet. But the people do really love them. And apparently, this song off the album is the most favored one, and I
Okay.
could see why, definitely. But in terms of tastes, it wouldn't be a sort of go-to track of mine. But that's not to say, like you said, you still enjoy it. And I found it really interesting as well, the way they put it together. But it definitely has, it's of that time and of that era,
Hmm.
really is.
Yeah.
So. I can confirm that No Dice were a band. Um,
That's a
I
start.
roughly 1976 to about 1982. And although there's nothing to confirm this, from the looks of it, they are UK, perhaps even London based.
Oh,
I do
okay.
have the names of the personnel. So, our warbling hero was Roger Ferris on vocals. Gary Strange on bass, and apparently it seems that he was the songwriter as well.
Okay.
Dave Martin on guitar, Chris Wiles drums, and Dave Moore keyboards. That's all the personnel we got. So everything else was some poor sap who was getting paid, 2.5 quid an hour to do the rest of the stuff on there in terms of the other instruments. So this is the closing track from their debut album, self-titled No Dice, from 1977,
Okay.
which is an interesting time when you think about everything else that's going on in Britain in 1977. This is definitely, you know, sort of like the dinosaurs wondering, oh, what's that big shiny thing in the sky? Oh, it's called Pug, and it's come to wipe us out in the form
Yeah.
of a meteorite. No. So this sort of music, wouldn't last beyond 1977, really, in terms of in the popular.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can see why it just suddenly died a death. Yeah, so really
Yeah,
interesting.
poor timing, and especially given that it came out over there when there was a revolution musically that was about to happen.
Yeah,
Um, and it's actually just surprising for me, and maybe this is just a glimpse into my own ignorance when it comes to like the musical stylings, especially during a time that preceded my existence over a foreign country to me. But I would have never expected this kind of sound, to get any sort of groundswell over here. This to me is because not this, but the genre has enough cheesiness and corniness and slight saccharine nature to it, especially the lyricism and stuff, that it would seem like middle America to me. Like this is the stuff that like would people would flock to their top 40 stuff around that time in America to check out and go see this band play a stadium or a large venue, and it doesn't sound English to me. So that's kind of surprising to hear that they're probably Londoners.
yeah. I'd imagine they'd have grown up listening to that sort of stuff. You class as AOR, um, and it's probably their misfortune that they were born in the wrong continent
Yeah.
and not 10 years before. I think this sort of thing would have done really, really well early 70s.
Yeah.
Would have been very. That's my guess. So, as I said, nothing on the internet about them at all. Um, Looked at various things, nothing on Wikipedia, nothing on AllMusic. Discogs, thank goodness, sort of list their stuff, but that's about it. And that's how I was able to get personnel. So I've got the lyrics, which I discerned myself.
Jesus.
Um, so
Labor of love.
let's have a go at that, shall we? Um, Pretty girls with starry eyes, working days, not sleeping nights. Anywhere's home, till the grey light drips in, taking in the shadows. Lonely girls out with the stars, disappearing on some stranger's arm. Maybe they won't ever be seen again. Girls who do for their careers, with their big ideas. They get starstruck flying, so they're clutching at straws for a line in a film where life is the price they may pay. Sunken eyes, hardened smiles, still trying for time with anywhere in sight, caring not which way their wind now blows. That's a very British line. Crying in the shadows. She's fallen this time, yeah. she's fallen this time. And then the guitar solo sort of starts, and then he mumbles some lines. No, she's fallen. She's always falling. And then he says it a few more times with the strings coming as well, and it's just less and less discernible. And that's the lyrics. So yeah, cautionary tale.
Yeah.
Um,
I heard the
but
stars in the eyes, and I, for part of me was thinking like aspiring actress who has to do some
yeah.
things to get where they want, or a lady of the night type situation. It's because I wasn't catching every single lyric, but when you sort of spelt it out, and yeoman's work on your part for scribing these down yourself rather than finding them through a Google search, which you probably would have come up empty-handed on. But yeah,
Mhm.
it's a clearer
I
picture that
did.
that sounds right. Yeah, but a clearer picture now that it seems like this is a young wannabe starlet who's willing to do um, shitty things, living in a man's world, in a man's business, trying to make a name for herself. Interesting stuff, though.
You can imagine this as a small vignette in a sort of 70s film,
Yeah.
that sort of bit and showing it. And yeah, it just fits perfectly. That sort of, yeah. But anyway, so they released another album called Two Faced in 1979. Again, nothing about it. However, on All Music, it just says it exists, but it has got a rating of 4.5 stars by five um, users rating it, but no one's dropped any sort of thing. So again, I think this hits with certain people and they absolutely adore it. Incidentally, No Dice is also the name of a power pop album from 1970 by the group Badfinger. And that's what you get when you put No Dice into Google. Um, that and pretty much nothing else but that again and again after the fourth page of Google. Yeah, I gave up. Thanks, Badfinger. Anyway, was one little snippet from a user on Amazon who'd bought their stuff on CD, I think, or whatever. And they put on this: no dice may not have been trailblazers of originality or pioneers of a new trend, but they made a fantastic album talking about their debut, which this is on. Unfortunately, even though EMI put a lot of money into them, they kind of got lost amongst the punk movement and subsequent new wave and then new romantics. No Dice were a traditional rock band in the mold of Rolling Stones, Faces style, and were equally at home rocking things up or stretching them on a well-constructed ballad.
Yeah.
They made one more album, Two Face, and a single before disbanding in around 1982. Yeah, so I can gather from Discogs they put out 6 singles. I can't find any evidence that they ever threatened the charts in any country in any way. So I don't think, I think they went for it and it didn't quite. But there's plenty of stories of
Yeah.
that. Um, in the comments as well on the clip which I posted to you, one of them said, that they did reform for a one-off gig at Dingwalls in London on Wednesday, May the 16th, 2012. So we just missed it for tickets.
Uh,
But yeah, I think it's really nice they did that, but a Wednesday, not exactly a high demand day of the week.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I'd imagine if there were people there, that's a long time since their debut album. I bet that would have been quite a cool evening. People who absolutely adored them, and it would have been a fun time.
No, that's
Yeah,
awesome. Yeah, you get an opportunity kind of probably out of the blue and unpredicted or foreseen to go see somebody from, decades before.
yeah.
That's always good fun. I mean, I'm
I've
just,
got plenty of albums that were sort of one-offs and all that I listened to loads. And then if I thought the band was, that I didn't even know was reuniting for off, I'd make it my way down
yeah,
there.
you just took the
It's,
words out of my mouth. I was going to say that I'm sure there's plenty of acts that fit that bill that if they were to come back around for me, I'd be like, ooh, and I go check it out with maybe 100 people, at a show, and that would,
yeah,
and hell, if it was on a Wednesday night, I'd go. So
yeah, definitely.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
probably actually, yeah. Say if you're down in London, that would actually be a bit of a pull for you,
yeah.
rather than busy the weekend. But yeah, Wednesday too,
And
right?
Christ, I mean, if their
Uh,
heyday was 77, it's not like they're going to play well into the wee hours on a Wednesday night in London. You'll probably be home with plenty of time to get some sleep.
Fantastic. So there you go. That is all I've got.
Well, fair
Unfortunately, I've
enough. It
no
was
dice. I would say to music and cat lover dash VC6JB. Thanks for this. If you've got any more info, please drop it because we'd
yeah.
love
Let
to
us
hear
know.
about it. Very interesting. And an interesting sort of addition to the channel.
It
Yeah.
was.
So thanks for popping it. I'll wrap things up. Thanks for listening to Sandy.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Music and Cat Lover, for dropping this. Folks out there, you got suggestions like this, then please feel free to drop them any comments on any of our episodes and we'll add it to the list. The list is now strewn with the blood of many workers listening on it, a bit like the old railway in World War II that the Japanese oversaw. But, it does finish eventually and we may get round to your tune. But, So please tell us what you think about this. We'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions. Do hit the like button if you like this and drop those comments. Very interested to see what people think. Um, and if you haven't subscribed already, please do. We really appreciate everybody who does and show support for the channel. It all helps. That being said, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see all of you on the next episode of the Audiophiles.
See you later, guys.